I'm Dr. Kimberly, and in the month of December, we are going to focus on learning the physiology, tools that you can use to help combat, and some long-term retraining strategies for anxiety, depression, and thyroid. Why are we talking about this in December? Well, December, right? Holidays can be very trying. The pressure of creating perfection now has just gone overboard, and so parents are always trying to do more, give more, yes, maybe we're beginning to go a shift away from give things to give experiences, but it's not even anymore about the experience of baking cookies together or cinnamon rolls or decorating the tree. It's, let's take them to a place that costs $700 for the day for us to go. So there's this whirlwind of anxiety that dumps in the holidays to create this fantastical, wonderful, memory-creating experience. And it can be really, really hard. And then depression for so many sinks in the winter months because the sun is gone. Have you ever stopped to think why when the light is gone, that you begin to get depressed? Just take a minute and think about that. When the light is gone, when the sun is gone, you begin to get a little bit depressed. It's how the body is made to work. It's how the system works. When you are no longer exposed to the light, when you're no longer exposed to the sun, that's powerful. I'm gonna cry. Your body begins to deflate a little bit. You don't create the right hormones in the right proportions. You begin to lose motivation to do things. Trying to feel suddenly becomes really difficult. And so how does thyroid work into any of that? Well, we're going to talk about thyroid a little bit more deeply later. But thyroid it has the worst reputation in the body, I think, of any particular organ, because we have now decided that the thyroid is really about your metabolism. It's about being fat or it's about being skinny. And it is the worst idea about what thyroid does that I've ever heard. I used to think that before I started really studying physiology. So thyroid is way, 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 way more than fat versus skinny. Thyroid is about metabolism. But what you need to understand is metabolism is energy production in a cell. So your body is made up of a whole bunch of cells, right? And they only work if they have energy production. Well, when your thyroid isn't working properly, all of those cells are not going to work properly. Or, as you'll find out in a few minutes, when your liver isn't doing its job, your thyroid hormones aren't going to do what they're supposed to do. So, as you can see, this is a big, gigantic topic: anxiety, depression, and thyroid. I am going to try to take 10 years of education, 3 years of reading, and 35 years of a lifetime, and tell you everything I know in 10 minutes or less over the next 3.5 to 4 weeks. So you can see why I giggle a little bit. There's just so much here. So today we're going to start with an overview and an introduction. Anxiety, depression, thyroid. Quick tools for fixes, because sometimes we just need the tool for the fix right now. And then long-term strategies to heal these parts in your body. So our 2 reference books for probably the next 2 weeks are going to be, why do I still have thyroid symptoms when my labs turn out fine? Now, I hear this at least 4 times a week. Yeah, my labs come back fine, but I still feel like crap. Well, there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that later. So that's the book. I posted the links on Facebook, so you should be able to order those books from Amazon. Here's my disclosure. If you order from the links that I posted, I might get paid like 11 cents. So it's more about education for me. I do not have this big, huge blog platform where I am actively making money from my education. The other one is the unlikely choice for anxiety, depression, and thyroid is The Gifts of Imperfection by my best friend that I've never actually met, Brene Brown. This is $9. This is the best $9 you will spend if you read the book and you take it to heart in your entire life, except for the Bible, but that's not $9 most of the time. Here, this book, okay, The Gifts of Imperfection, Brene Brown. This is for my nerds. This is my nerd book, okay? This is my, hey, let's talk about the labs. Let's talk about the immune response. This is why thyroid cannot be tested by TSH. We're going to talk about the liver. We're going to talk about the interleukins. We're going to talk about the cytokines. We're going to talk about how the cells interact. So this is your nerd book. If I have some nerds who are just trying to understand, or if I have some doctor friends who are like, man, I mean, like, I got a lot of patients who have these thyroid problems, and you know, their doctors say they're fine, but clearly I can tell that they're not. Yes, their cervical spine is always out of alignment, but we're constantly trying to correct that, and it won't get corrected. Well, it's probably because there are no boxes in the body. Quite frankly, there are no boxes in life, but there are no boxes in the body. And that is why we have to talk about anxiety, depression, and thyroid all at once. So, here we go. Anxiety, at the root of what anxiety is unknown plus a fear response. We don't get anxious about things that we know are coming. So anxiety is a fear response from the amygdala in your brain. It's a fear response because of unknown factors. So we create anxiety because of our past experiences, our memories. We have a fear response to something that is attached to this anxiety thing. So maybe let's just talk about, I have anxiety about speaking to people. It's maybe not true. I've always loved to stand in front of people and talk. But let's just use that because the fear of public speaking is quite large, right? So we have this past experience of maybe I said something when I was 3 or 4 and everybody laughed at me. And that made me feel very small, and it made me feel very fearful because people laughed at me. Or I said something in front of my family and it was the wrong thing because maybe I said a bad word that I heard somewhere and I got a big no response. So you understand now where this past experience with amygdala comes in. So that's that fear response. And then you have your current environment. So this is how anxiety happens, right? So then we have our current environment that tells us what is acceptable in culture, what is acceptable for right now, and what isn't acceptable. And then you have your view of self. And when you combine all of these three things together, you either have a lot of anxiety or you have not a lot of anxiety. So anxiety, we would love, and I have struggled for a long time with anxiety. This is going to ruffle some feathers. I feel like many of us would love to say, oh, I have an imbalance in my brain. My chemicals are off. And so I just have generalized anxiety disorder. I constantly, regularly am anxious about everything. I have this overdrive of fear. And these are absolutely real responses. These are absolutely real things that are happening in your body. These are absolutely true. You absolutely do have a panic attack. Your heart races. You get into cold sweats. Your body just goes into overdrive because of your amygdala response, because of your past experiences, the fear that has been installed, your view of the current circumstances, and your view of self. So, neurologically, your view of self is very much a right-brained experience. The right brain is where we do a lot of our interactive integrations of our world. Okay, so when you have very left brain people who are the doers, our left brain people are the get it done task, let's do it, let's go for it, we got to do this, 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 and this, collateral damage, who cares? We got stuff to do. So honestly, that's a lot of the population. And when you have that very left brain dominant part of your brain, when you have that hemisphericity difference, the left brain doesn't like to talk to the right brain because the left brain can do it by itself. And so the right brain begins to get shut down. So when you don't have a strong integrative brain, you can absolutely lead to anxiety. So there are things that you can do to balance out your brain. That's one of the things that we are trying to do here in the office, that we are doing here in the office with whole body vibration and cold laser therapy and color therapy and adjustments. We are manipulating inputs to the brain. We are creating specific inputs into the brain to right the hemisphericity in the brain, to correct the hemisphericity in the brain. That's what it's called. So that's the high level of anxiety. So what do we look at when we are maybe doing tests for anxiety? So there are no boxes in the body. If there's one thing I want you to understand after all of this conversation, it's a long one, that there are no boxes in the body. So we would look at your 5-HTP. We would look at your cortisol cycle, not just, one and done. We would look at your bowel movements. We would look at your vitals. We would look at your eating patterns, and we look at all of your coping mechanisms. So clinically speaking, that's what we would look for in trying to figure out how we address your specific kind of anxiety. Depression is flat emotion or no motivation. Depression is an interesting combination of right brain and left brain contradiction. And it is driven largely, depression is driven largely by mineral deficiency and gut health. So when we look at depression, so flat emotion, no motivation, again, this comes from your amygdala, those past experiences and fear responses. But the view of self here is where that really comes in. We begin to see that self is not worthy, self is not good enough, self should not do much at all. And so left brain is like, all right, we just won't do the things. That's fine. So that's kind of what depression is. Clinically, when we're looking at depression, we want to look at dopamine, 5-HTP, SAMe, which is a conversion factor from your pre's to your actives. So is NAD. That's another thing that we want to look for. Again, that's a conversion factor in the cell from pre to active version. We want to look at bowel cycle, sex drive, your addictions, sugar addictions, coping mechanisms, and your caffeine addictions. Because all of these play into how your chemicals get made, how your chemicals work, and how your cellular function happens. So thyroid is your metabolism. It is your cellular function. Thyroid influences every cell in the body. So when your thyroid isn't functioning well, you are not functioning well. When your thyroid isn't functioning well, there's a possibility, or when you have thyroid symptoms, there's a possibility that your liver isn't functioning very well, that you are in sympathetic overdrive, which means you're always in fight or flight, or that your HPA axis, your hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, so that's going to be your tell the body what to do hormone. Those are your releasing hormones or your stimulating hormones. And then they go to the organs in the body that keep your body going and functioning. When those are low, that is a pituitary dysfunction that we need to pay attention to, or that is a feedback cycle that tells the body, hey, we need more of that because clearly this isn't working. So that is why thyroid has become, let's test TSH. TSH will tell us everything we need to know about thyroid. TSH is a really bad model of thyroid function because the TSH may be stimulated at proper amounts, but it may not be used in the body properly. If TSH is high, it is the assumption that the body isn't using thyroid hormones properly. So let's give it a medication and make it work better. But what if it's the liver converting the problem that needs some more help? What if we just detoxified the liver? What if we stopped drinking every day, even if it's 2 glasses? What if we stopped drinking every day? What if we stopped all of our chemicals that we put on our face and our bodies and our clothes? What if we detoxified the liver, made the liver healthy, and now our TSH is plenty and our body is using all of our thyroid? So a really good thyroid panel is not TSH. So when you go have your thyroid tested and it comes back and it's like TSH, we don't know nothing about your thyroid. It's really true. We don't know nothing about your thyroid when TSH is the only thing that's tested. When we really want to see what thyroid function looks like, we're looking at TSH, T3, the free form and the reverse T3. We're looking at T4, the total T4 and the free T4. We're looking at TPO, which is your possibility of Hashimoto's. But guess what? Your immune system fluctuates, right? So your TPO may not be really high if you're not in a flare. Autoimmunity. If you're not in a flare, you may not have TPO show up, but you still may have a tendency toward Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is the autoimmune version. So you can see this is a complicated, convoluted construction of the body, right? Of how things all work together, which is why we have to understand that chemically testing, chemically analyzing is not enough. We have to look at the entire picture. We have to look at the entire body function when we are talking about anxiety, depression, and thyroid, and they all go hand in hand. So when we're looking at all of these things, you'll see that we're looking at many of the same processes. We're looking at a lot of the same clinical presentations, and that's why we talk about anxiety, depression, and thyroid all together. So that is your not so brief overview of what anxiety, depression, and thyroid all have to do with one another. And hopefully now with the idea of where anxiety comes from, with the knowledge of where that anxiety comes from physiologically, you'll be able to see why just taking a medication while the SSRIs don't work for anxiety, because it is not usually a serotonin problem. It is not usually a serotonin problem. It is not usually a serotonin problem. So this SSRIs are not going to be effective for anxiety. They may be a bit more effective for depression, but usually not always, because monotherapy or a singular therapy in a body-wide destruction is never going to work. It's never going to work. So, what are a couple of tools that you can use in the moment right now to help stop anxiety? So the tools, the supplements that you can take to help lower those anxiety levels, to help sort of monitor that, because sometimes we need a tool so that we can get to long-term correction, right? So in chiropractic, a lot of people come in, oh, I got pain, I just want to get out of pain. Well, you know what? You're going to get back into pain if you don't change the root cause. So we're going to change the root cause after we get out of pain. So this is after we get out of our anxiety and depression cycle, and we begin to heal the thyroid. Thyroid does not get fixed overnight. Anxiety, depression are lifetime things that we have to actively take control of what's going on. Okay, actively take control of what's going on inside your brain and inside your body. This is something that you can do. But our tools are CBD, most amazing singular chemical I've ever read about. Our CBD, L-theanine, fantastic mood modulator, fantastic for lowering depression. If you are scared of CBD and testing, then absolutely L-theanine is your go-to. When you combine CBD and L-theanine, it is magic. It is absolute magic in your body. So CBD, L-theanine, 5-HTP. I tend not to do the 5-HTP until I have some testing, unless you are not sleeping. And the 5-HTP and the melatonin go hand in hand because they are just a few chemical reactions away. So those are our tools for anxiety and depression. Those are our tools for anxiety and depression. CBD, L-theanine, 5-HTP, and melatonin. Those are our quick fix tools. They are not long-term restoration for our anxiety and depression. Long term, we have to go through GI healing or gut restoration healing, that brain gut access. We have to go through thought retraining, which we're all going to talk about these later, and postural retraining. So why does posture matter? Here we go. This is why I love this. Because every input into the brain, external, internal, is presented in your posture. Every input from your external environment and your internal environment is presented in your posture. So, now, I'm in a chair. So, this is how most of us sit. Now, all I have to do from here, because I'm working at my desk, right? All I have to do is maybe change the position of my elbows. I didn't change anything else. Change the position of my elbows. And all of a sudden, you might begin to understand why our normal, everyday posture breeds fear. Now, you add in a phone, and it's really not hard to understand why our phones are creating anxiety and depression. Why our everyday choices that we're making, we won't even talk about radiation, why our everyday choices are creating a loop in your body for anxiety and depression. So, long-term fixes are GI healing, gut restoration, thought retraining, posture retraining, because we want to give every input into the brain that we are made by God, specifically, purposefully, that we are loved, that we are accepted, that we belong, that we are capable, and that we are worthy of love. Because at the heart of all of these things is a convoluted identity crisis that we can combat with our thoughts. And here, when it's winter and the light is gone and the sun is gone, we feel the effects of stepping away from the light and stepping away from the sun far more than we ever have before. Sorry, it's big. It's big. So, if you would like some one-on-one help with this, I can help you with these things remotely. I can help you with them in the office. It's big, okay? So, I know this is a long one. This is just a brief overview. We will go into anxiety, depression, thyroid, and these bigger fixes in more detail later on. But that's the overview. Now you want to understand a little bit more about how this happens in your body. We talked a lot about anxiety because it's the biggest thing that I see in the office right now. It's the biggest thing that I see in my friends. It's the biggest thing that I see overall in America right now is anxiety. So we're going to focus hard on that because we feel like anxiety overtakes us and we don't know what to do. Because that is your amygdala at its worst. You guys have a great week, and we will talk to you next week when we discuss in a little bit more detail depression, thyroid, anxiety, clinical findings, and what to do about those clinical findings.